Okay, dear ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I would like to welcome you here. My name is Kirill Kornilyev. I will be the moderator of our breakout session. It's rather complicated and multifaceted topic we will be discussing today. It's nice to see you here. And after lunch, it's a little bit difficult to sit at the discussion table, but I hope that all those who have come here are great professionals and people who are very interested in the big data topic. And first of all, I'd like to introduce our speakers of our interesting panel. So, Algidras Shakmanas, Vice President and Head of the Digital Business of Promsvyazbank, Denis Reimer, Vice President of Lanit Company, Mr. Yemeshev, Vice President for New Solutions of Tinkoff Bank, Mr. Sergey Zolotarev, who is Director of the Department for Universal Platform of Data from IBS, Ralf Lietzke, CEO of Giesecke, Devrient, LOMO, Ronald Raffensperger, who is the Technical Director of Solutions for Data Center from Huawei, and I'm representing IBM company. I'm the head for computer systems in Central Europe. So, let's start. So, just a few words about the format. We will have 1 hour and a half, and after my brief introduction, I'd like to give floor to our panelists, the brief speech. They will touch upon the aspects of big data, which is more relevant as he sees that. And after that, I will ask questions to the participants of our panel because there are a lot of questions. It's a multifaceted topic, as I have mentioned, and we will have a few rounds of topics. And then we will have a Q&A session from the audience. So let's start. So the topic of big data is not a new topic. It has been known for quite a while, in particular to the financial sector. Some organizations have had real results in this field, and we understand what it is all about, generally. We know who has mastered this topic, and we see the specific results achieved by some companies, and sometimes they had a very good payback of investments and also the improvement of the efficiency of business. Also, they have gained new clients, and somewhere the topic didn't go so well and didn't develop well. But in general, it is a very relevant topic. We are creating the digital model of the world, and we have been doing that for the last 15 years. And we have all the networks around the world. We are using the billions of mobile phones. We have sensors. We have IoT development. Now, planet, we are creating the digital model of the real world. Every day we are generating 2.5 billion of terabytes, and it is a very huge figure. And we can't imagine how much data we will accumulate in the foreseeable future because the model is growing, and of course the business would like to use this diversity of data in order to get the real profit for their business, the improvement of their efficiency and gaining more money. And for the last years, Mr. General Matthew has been using this phrase that data in the 21st century is the same resource in terms of the importance and can be compared to the oil of the 20th century. And of course, it is a tentative analogy, but those who will be able to get the real profit from the data will get competitive advantage. So how can we do that? And what can we do with the data? How do we store it? And what regulatory aspects can be seen there? And it is a very important and interesting topic. And today we will touch upon those aspects. So I tried to show you on this slide the most important blocks or aspects that are especially relevant for big data issues. Let's start with the data itself. So where do we get the data that then can be analyzed, those that will be called the big data. First of all, the corporate data, which is clear to everybody, the external data, some regulatory data, and everything combined has to be used. So what can be done there? We can import them and integrate them into the storage that you have, or to do the business analytics as we go in the flow of the data. If you are importing it, then you import it into the managed cloud of data or traditional repository of data. And when you store it, when you keep it and save it, you can visualize the data. And if we follow this pathway, the discussion will be too professional and too detailed. And I think that we will view big data as a whole in general. These topics can be divided into three aspects: the data collection, big data collection, the management of big data, and the usage of big data. And on this level, we will try to see how big data is applied in business currently and primarily in the financial sector. I don't think that there is much to say as an introduction, and I wouldn't like to monopolize the mic, but I'd like to show you one more slide. Big data is not only the collection and the saving of everything you see or you hear. So if you store it in one unified storage, it will not look like a lake of the big data, but a backwater. Wikipedia defines the lake as a repository of big data that provides you with the opportunity to use it in different formats and in different form of files. So I think that it is quite an applicable explanation of what it really is. And now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Sergey Zolotarev, and I know the topic of his speech, and I think that it will be a logical continuation of our discussion. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you. My name is Sergey Zolotarev. Could you please turn on the presentation? My name is Sergey Zolotarev, and I'm the managing partner of the technological project Arena Data. What we're doing is centered around the area that has been characterized as a platform for the collection and storage data. So our moderator was right. When we talk about big data, we should be specifically talking about the application, about machine learning, about the analytics, about specific business cases or technological story. And then we are talking about the lake of data, how it should be structured, why should we do that. And if we paraphrase what Oleg Tinkov mentioned in the plenary session, just look, great fintech, working, operating in the US and here in Russia, and we are preparing the multi-purpose platform of data with an open source, with an open code, and our direct competitors are in California, in the US. And it so happened that we studied at the same schools of life, and we managed to construct the same platform here in Russia, as our colleagues do in the US. If we talk about the technological aspects that are applied in building the technological foundation basis for big data, there are several of them. And I think that many of you are working in this sphere, they know that. And there is a storage, classical storage of data, and a very fashionable phenomenon of a data lake. And also there are new architectures emerging, and to select one option currently, and the practice shows that it is rather complicated, because our practice is of 5 years, and we've participated in the majority of big projects that have been implemented in Russia and in CIS, and many clients are here in this forum with us, and we have had a clear answer to this question. as a practical experience. The state-of-the-art platform of data is the integrated platform, and here we do not have one unique tool or one unique approach. Today it's very important to combine those approaches. And another important issue when we talk about the platform for big data, I liked Mr. Yamyshev saying that we have to understand the difference between onlineization and digitalization of a business. So if we want to build the digital business, we can't build that without such multi-purpose platform. It can be operating with any source of data, with any kind of speed, and this platform can be operating with any type of load, interfaces, BI, and other tools. As I have already mentioned, our experience is of 5 years, and at some stage we understood that we've accumulated extensive expertise in order to create our own products, and we moved towards achieving this goal. We had a Hadoop platform, and now we added the integrated element to this platform, and our goal is to build fully analytical platform for the storage of big data on open source components, and to make it available for enterprises, having all the necessary elements for the operation, for the implementation of such platforms for corporate clients. What we are doing is a unique products, and we have Russian software. It has been developed in compliance with Open Data Platform Initiative standards under Linux Foundation. We have been the member of this foundation since 2015. It is software that has been certified in the US and in Russia as well. Today, we are very young startup and young product, but nevertheless, we have big Russian customers. We have some foreign customers from Asia, from Singapore. They're using our product in the framework of their own developments. And from the very start, when we started developing the product, we were guided by the international standards in this area. It is not accidental. If we look at the standardization in the framework we are existing, the leading companies, Hotelworks and IBM, they are the colleagues in our association, Scalable. SAP purchased this company quite recently. Thank you, Sergey. You've touched upon the aspect of the platform. Which platforms we see as of today, new platforms for implementation of serious projects related to big data. But as we have mentioned, big data is penetrating into our life in the form of this digital image of our real world. And I think that it will be very interesting to have a look at how big data is penetrating into financial sector, in particular with the physical currency circulation. And now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Ralf Lietzke, please. Thank you very much.
1 second. First, I thought I'm an alien here because we come from a completely different industry. But I see some of our friends from the central bank, from Rosenkass, who still value banknotes. And despite the 2 days, what we have heard about digitalization and digital banking and all these. Fitness for circulation. And a very important aspect for this or for the banks is to increase optimization or increase the efficiency of a circulation process. It's very important to understand and to have the knowledge about the banknotes and their properties. And I want to refer here to a very important point. to track a banknote, to have knowledge about the whole life cycle of a banknote. For this, you need to understand the serial number or the knowledge of the serial number. You need to have the technology and to use the technology for reading a serial number. And this is done currently only by a few central banks all over the world. It is some central banks in the European zone. It is the Federal Reserve Bank of America and the People Banks of China, maybe some others as well. But here in Russia, we use already this technology for the last 4 to 5 years, thanks to the Central Bank of Russia. So Russia is a kind of benchmark leader for this technology. But this is only the first step. Now we need to do the others. We need to collect these big data, to analyze this big data, to take measures and to implement. A cash cycle provides multi-data sources. It starts with the print work, it goes over the central bank, to the commercial banks, to the retail, and to the CIT as well. Final to the debt of a banknote. The debt of the banknote means shredding of the banknote. All these data are collected by banknote processing systems and sent to data analytic platforms. But Giesecke Devrient developed these kind of data analytic platform, which easy collect the data, analyze the data on time, and give information for the central banks, for the commercial banks, that they have something in their hand to increase the efficiency of their circulation process. And this here is a chart which shows us how a banknote changes during the lifetime. I do not want to explain this now in detail, but I think Vladimir Demidchenko knows very well what I'm talking about. This is a very important point, how to use big data even for banknotes. It is possible, and it should be done here in Russia as well, to be, and this is my personal point of view, to be competitive in comparison to digital or virtual banking. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. As you see, Sergey has provided his viewpoint that we already have the Russian platforms with the functionality for big data processing, and now we've heard a specific example of how it is applied in the financial sector, the traditional approach of currency circulation. But now I'd like to go back to the following issue. Let's have a look at how these problems of big data are resolved in the financial sector. Which main factors we have there that have an impact on the collection and data management? And now I'd like to give the floor to Ron.
Okay, thank you very much. Just first, I think a little bit about Huawei. Many of you may know Huawei from our work with telecommunications carriers and providing stuff that generally you don't see. Our name is becoming much more well-known for the smartphones. But Huawei has also been very active over the last few years in IT, starting with the hardware, servers, storage, networking, that sort of stuff. But over the last few years, we've developed cloud computing and big data platforms. Some of our larger customers are the banks in China. I think one of the things that we have found, of course, the population densities in China are much higher. And so when we talk about scale, the amount of information that has to be stored, the amount of information that has to be processed, what you try to do as far as how many transactions are actually going on if you're trying to do real-time data processing using big data. We've had some interesting experiences, and we've deployed this big data platform in quite a number of them. So what I'd like to do now is just kind of give you a very high-level view of how the challenges exist with big data that we can, I think, then continue to discuss. So the challenge, of course, is that we're being inundated in information. Huawei's advanced R&D lab is called the 2012 lab. And it actually was established in 2012. And at the time, people asked me, well, what are you going to call it next year? But it wasn't about when it was established. It was actually about the movie 2012. So if you may remember, that movie had the world being inundated in water. And for our founder, that really resonated with the situation that was happening around the world, which is that the world is being inundated in information. And so the role of the 2012 lab at Huawei is to save civilization from being drowned in information. So the challenge for your businesses, for financial industries in particular, is you have this tsunami of information that's coming. How do you turn it into something that is placid and useful? The data lake is a common term that's used when we talk about big data, and it's really, some nice, calm set of information that you want to be able to dip into to get the information that will actually help you to make your business better. Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is get knowledge, right? You're looking for that needle inside of the haystack. And when the body of information is so large, it makes that challenge very difficult. So it really is about trying to get knowledge. And that's what will help you and to provide new business models, to be more efficient, to be able to succeed. So in our experience, some of the changes, some of the challenges and the dangers to avoid, I worked for a number of years in IBM, and one of the common terms that people talked about is you're trying to boil the ocean, right? You can expend a great deal of energy on trying to do something that at the end of the day really is not going to raise the temperature of the ocean. So that what you want to avoid is diving in, right? So, I'm going to take every single bit of information that exists within my enterprise, and I'm going to put it all into this data lake, and then I'm going to, use artificial intelligence. I'm going to hire some data scientists, and everything is going to be magical. But the amount of effort to actually do that will really not result in what it is that you're trying to do. The next danger, and the thing that we've found with our financial customers in particular, is that they try to reach too far. And I think that one of the challenges is with big data is there are so many potential areas that you can utilize the information and gain knowledge. But if you try to suddenly become utilizing big data to solve all of your enterprise's problems, then you're going to end up with a problem. And finally, the challenge, and I think everyone on the panel will discuss this, is that there are a lot of things that you can do with big data that can get you into a lot of trouble. For various reasons. It could be that you allow information to be exposed. It could be that you allow people to have access that shouldn't have access. Maybe you accidentally put the data somewhere it shouldn't be from a geographic standpoint. So these are the biggest dangers that we have run into. And I think that at the end, what we should remember is that big data is a journey. It is, start with very, very clear goals, take one step at a time, and be able to reach your goals at the end of this journey. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. In fact, really bring it all into the one coherent view, which I thank you for. And big data is a journey. And I may be asked Denis to share with us the experience of the systems integrator in driving their clients through this journey. Denis, please.
Здравствуйте.
Hello. I will not have any slides. It was good that journey was mentioned. I would tell you the background, how we decided to join the big data and how we decided to earn money by that. In 2014, within Lanit, we created a clever data company within our group. It was focused on two things, the big data and the digital marketing. Why digital marketing? That's because Gartner said that the marketologist budgets would be much greater than the IT budgets by 2018. Well, it hasn't happened here yet. Maybe it has in the West, but we decided to go there. But if we continue that pitch that our colleague made here, we need to try to use this data in business. And in order to collect this data, we decided to go down an unorthodox path. We need a lot of data. We understood this. Everyone acquires this data, so we shouldn't be collecting the data ourselves. Instead, we should create a platform where this data that we collect could be united, combined. Now it's called the Data Marketing Cloud. That's the platform we created. And various suppliers of data could assemble that for various users of the Internet, for groups of such users. So we needed to find a solution that would allow you to customize your communication with the target groups. And that's how we started to play this game. Well, as an integrator, our goal was to collect the data, to process the data, build the cloud platform using outsourced components. It was a well-running system. And then we started to look for business cases, looking for someone who would be in need of this data. Over the last 3 years, the market is still evolving. We're still looking for the cases like that. But one of the obvious cases is marketing, working with people, customizing your offer. We have integrated our efforts with the largest advertising networks, including Google, and we are the only partner of Google in Russia for data automation. And now you can upload into Google some segments that would be based on the communication of the users with your website, enriched with the outside data. And the profiles would include more than 1,000 attributes for every anonymous user. And then you would build a segment based on that, and then you can show what your plan could be. That's a working model. It's premature to talk about machine learning or artificial intelligence, because the largest task is for the industry to get very rapid feedback. And in order to get that, you need to take effort. You need to do some further integration. But that's the direction we're going in. We have more than 20 suppliers of data on that platform. All of the suppliers of data on the Russian internet users. So 80 million users have their data updated, and then you can target your communications to such users. That's what we have been doing. We're still looking for the business cases, thinking about how to create a proper ecosystem for data exchange, so that the market participants who have the data could earn by using the data and the knowledge that they have acquired on their users. Well, that's very briefly the adventure that we've been having, which continues, and we will be looking for new cases. Thank you very much, Denis. Denis has just shared with us his experience working with big data from the standpoint of an integrator, someone who created a platform. But I would also like to hear from someone who is a user of this, a banking institution. What is the outlook for the big data in a real bank? How is it implemented in reality? And Algidras, I would like you to address this. You know, I've been listening to my colleagues, and I was thinking, when this gold rush started in California, do you know who earned most money? The ones that sold shovels, jean pants, and things like that. And so far we've been only talking about shovels and spades. And as the business representatives, let's look at the financial side of the big data and the machine learning aspect of it. Let's say this to start. The financial industry is now in such a situation, well, a tsunami was mentioned, but I think we're now in the middle of a perfect storm. Initially, we are not fabricating anything tangible. We're not building smartphones or chairs. We are providing services, and the services are virtual, intangible, by definition. Secondly, for decades, or maybe hundreds of years, we have been, calculating things. We start with calculating risks and other things. Well, maybe the technologies to do that were very simple. You would use an arithmometer or abacus, but you would be able to still do that. And the actuaries and the bank risk analysts, they use models. And the third thing that is happening is working with a client basis, where you can have direct access to the client data without having an intermediary as a teller or an operation person, and you have direct communication with this data, real-time feedback. That's what you're getting. These three factors are something that provide us with an opportunity to perceive business models that would tell us how to live our lives further. It was clear to me that machine learning in the financial environment is even more important as an innovation, something that is happening nowadays, more important than blockchain, for example, or the other famous buzzwords, which also have an application for them. But artificial intelligence, and I would like to apologize to those who are involved in this field, but sorry for bringing this up. It's easier for me to say this. Artificial intelligence is going to disrupt our industry completely, radically. Well, what can robots not do in banks? They cannot be creative. They cannot create things. But do we do a lot of creativity in our banks? Well, what creativity can we speak about? A new name for a deposit plan? It's just a new number. Just one new rate. And some people would respond to this, some people would not. It's all a matter of your strategy, whether to go to volume or whether to go to margin. But essentially, it's just one number. It's a new rate. And many things that we deal with, very simple things, something that we've already calculated in advance, they mean that we are being automated, we are being robotized, but it's very easy to automate and robotize what we do. We're just afraid sometimes of all things new. I remember some panel discussions. People were speaking about the risks that exist for capital, what's going to happen to the capital, and it is clear that the machine learning has some major drawbacks. In America, as you probably know, the regulator prohibits you from using machine learning in risk policies. Basically, what happens in the society, what such models would do, they would just multiply those things. If something happens, like, for example, if you see that a black person is less likely to return a loan, but socially this is something that may be in contradiction with existing policies. But you can give these people money to let them climb the social ladder, but we stop giving them the money because we believe that the situation with the return rates is bad. Or, in the case of Microsoft, we had this case with the chatbot that they launched. Users trolled this bot. They, taught it to use racial slur, and they had to turn it off. And that was essentially a mirror of the society. And we can see that our society may not be the most beautiful and nice. But going back to the subject of finance, it is clear to me that robotization is inevitably something that will come to the bank as an institution. It's not smart to think that, well, we'll see how it's going to pan out, whether it's going to be applicable to us. It's going to be applicable to us 100%. And, of course, the changes will be gradual. And this will be similar to how it happened with hauling cargoes on trucks. I mean, a lot of smart people are creating very small added value, and they're doing these things that are well digitized. What does this mean? It means that when we take further steps, we could say that we could downsize our workforce by 1/3 or 1/2, because robots have a really good chance of replacing them, because many of the things we do is not creative work. We discussed this last year. We need to understand very seriously how we're going to handle things like the banking secret, proprietary information. And we couldn't use public clouds. And in the first half of the year, we built our own private cloud, a very large cluster of large amounts of data. But when I say big data, I always stutter, because we don't need big data. Why? Because the data by itself is nothing. What can you do with this data? What can you extract out of this data? There's a good word, actionable. I don't know how it will translate into Russian. Something that you can do with the data. So we can discuss at infinitum, you're going to have this or that. But 10 or 15 years ago, a client would come to a bank and they would be told you would be able to do this, you'd be able to do that, you will have the potential. It's not about the virtual potential. It's about the real things we can do with the data. And so what is really important to me, what matters to me as the business user, things like what business processes we're going to change by using data. How are we going to arrange this very good quality feedback loop? Because I believe in reinforced learning. It's when you learned a model, then you launched it, and then what happens after that is really amazing, really surprising. In the foreseeable future, we will have to stop knowing to whom, what, and why we're selling that. That's something that the model will know. We don't need to know this. And that is going to be the only way to be able to process individually millions of clients, because we don't have the ability to provide personalized service to a client if you haven't built this model, because you have tens of thousands of clients, but you can only be successful in working with them on a customized basis only through a model. But you would still produce the same feeling as if you were a personal manager who knows when you need the money, how to structure the money that you're going to be given without making you even think about what you actually need. And sometimes they say best interface is no interface. So this is the case when you don't need any interface. So we know a lot about our clients, but we do realize that we know just a portion of their lives. We can, of course, forecast. And we recently built an interesting model using the Vernadsky model. And we're talking about the clusterization of our clients, looking at their behaviors and their transactional activities. And this is something that gives us insights, especially after you have a look at 150 clusters. But in any case, we come up with very good profiles for every individual client.
But we do understand that there is the elasticity of the price, whether he will buy that at this price or not. But we don't know many things. And we need this data from ecosystems that are emerging and developing today, and content data about the behavior of our customers. So that would give us the opportunity to build graphs, charts, and Promsvyazbank with the Pora Russia developing the project with the questionnaires given to SMEs in order to develop forecasts for our economy development. And it is quite interesting. We have millions of clients to track their transactional behavior is possible, and we have good statistics that shows us how the economy is developing, whether it is improving, and some aspects, some spheres are just slowing down. And the practice, our practice shows that the legal entities' information demonstrates us how they are evolving, and that gives us the models, and it is kind of a simulation that has a lot to do yet, but this is the system that is currently being implemented, starting with transactional behavior, with loans, and I call that an ultimate digital sales break. When all the sales, and when I mean sales, not only marketing, but also communication with the clients, we track his behavior, how he behaves, and also we track down the communication in order to change it, in order for our models to learn this information. For example, the traditional CRM has the traditional model, and it has been launched, and then 9% of conversion. Is it good or is it bad? And what will you change with the next company? And we have a clear answer because, for example, one person cannot manage from 20 to 50 microsegments, and when you go down to the level of only one person, only a robot can do that, and only a machine learning system can cope with that. I like a phrase of Henry Moore, who is saying that machine learning is a new kind of electricity that will change all the industries. And I think that banks and financial institutions as of today, they were established in order to be changed. We are not creative. We are not painting anything. We are working with figures. We have more money in servers than in our cash desks. So finally, our main mission, main goal is providing professional services, individual services, and it will be achieved in the foreseeable future. Of course, we have our calculations, and the pathway is quite difficult, and of course there are risky solutions, but the price there is not very high, and when you see that a client is paying for a satellite TV, we can propose some automation to him, and we will do that instead of you, so you will not have to resolve that. And the price here will not be very high, and we can conduct this experiment quite easily. So the final goal is to combine the system into to combine the models into unified systems. And now our guys are providing the real-time system, and CRM, they do not particularly like that. But when a client uses one element, for example, a card, which was mentioned by Mr. King yesterday, client goes to a shop and he's buying something and he does not have money with him, and you could provide him with money, and you have only 30 to 60 seconds because it is relevant only during this period of time. And this system, I think that will be operating before the end of this year in Promsvyazbank. And if we talk about legal entities, an important aspect is forecasting the needs of the banks, and then you enter the system, and you know all the features related to information arbitration. Something is disappearing, something is emerging, and you can bring your clients together based on their behavioral patterns, on the knowledge, on the expertise. There is an interesting story that is not the main driver, not the main factor. It's a sentimental aspect, because any big organization has their own news stream, and then you can see the sentiments, you can see what is happening on the market. And finishing my speech, I'd like to say the following. So first of all, big data as such, we do not need it. But if we can do something with it, so we can implement that into the process, and it can be valuable. But we should change the internal processes inside financial institutions in order to earn money by using this big data. And the second aspect, it will happen. definitely. But who will be the winner? That is the question. One of the problems of digitalization as such, the digital disruption, we see that in our periods, and cinema, music has already gone through this stage of development, through this digitalization. And one speaker at the panel mentioned that this is a demonetization, and that means the decrease in the margin. So when the margin is decreasing, it changes the scale, and it means that digitalization faces the same problem. Winner takes it all. That's why today we have to invest a lot of money into this area, because after that you cannot be competitive. You will not be able to be competitive. It will be a direct relations, affiliation, but without that, the retail banking will not be able to survive. Also, it is relevant for the business for retail. Thank you, Alexander. No. I'd like to give the floor to Alexander Yemishev. We have to stick to the time limit because we are running out of time. So we have looked at how the data is being used, how it is managed. And another question is how we collect this data. Alexander, please, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. I'm representing Tinkoff Bank. I don't think that I have to tell you about our bank. We are the largest line mobile bank. We do not have our branch offices. You've heard all of it. Yes, you have woken up, right? So I'd like to tell you a little about our experience of working, collecting big data. We've been doing that for a long period of time. We are online bank from the very start, and we were born in the new paradigm. We do not have branch offices, and we structure the processes in a different way. We cannot say that we have not thought about that, and the client will come to an office, and then a specialist will help them resolve those issues. And from the very start, we are structuring the process in order to fully manage the situation and adjust it if we need it. As a result, our processes are built into the systems that are generating the data. Going back to the topic of our discussion. So which problems do we see there? I see two problems. They have not been widely discussed here. Maybe this is due to the stage of development of each specific player on the market, but I see two problems that will be evolving. The first one is related, I don't want to call that an assembly, that's data acquisition or data collection, and the emergence of data organization. So everybody is showing beautiful charts, and the amount of data is growing, but we do not get any real benefit from that. And you can be analyzing it for a very long period of time, but then you do not get real results. So we have to learn not only to collect the necessary data, but learning to generate the necessary data. For example, you would like to develop a new product to change the existing process, and you shouldn't be thinking about there is great data. I will go there, I will collect it, I will negotiate with a partner about those aspects, and you should be thinking like that. I have the product, I have the client experience, the client gets the product in such a way, and then you should imagine which types of devices or data collection points can be used, what are the stages of the processes, how the product is purchased, the services that are provided at this stage. And then you can think about the unification of all those aspects, getting the real profit, the real benefit of this data. that is how it can be used in real life, because if you are just collecting the data and creating this lake of data or backwater, no matter how we call that, you will not be able to really use it. And if we think about it thoroughly, it will not be successful. And I can give you many examples. If you do not understand from the very start how you will be using the data, it will be a very long and very expensive process. So based on that, the main theory will be switching to a new kind of approach. You will be thinking in advance about the behavioral pattern of your clients, about the changes that you can introduce there. You help collecting data, you are starting thinking about the different points, different devices, how you can digitalize customers' behavior, and then you collect it no matter whether you put it into the lake, into the backwater, or anything else. The colleagues of this discussion, they know the right terms. And the second problem we should be thinking about, the main challenge, is people, because people are processing this data. Yes, I know about machine learning and AI, but now these are people who are analyzing the data. And the main problem is to have the right, highly competent people that should be engaged for doing this task, people who will be building the processes, understanding how it works, understanding all the figures, and this should be the people that believe they could digitalize and analyze data. And you just stop believing in the focus groups and some other groups of specialists and reports, research, just a very simple figure that we have there. Huge number of tests that give you the results, and then you change the process accordingly. And the more tests of that kind you have, the more clear understanding you will have. If you have 100 cycles and it gives you 1% growth, then it grows accordingly. So here, the logic is quite simple. If you have the necessary people, and of course you have the basis, you have the tools, but if you have people who can conduct tests very easily and very fast, and if you don't have these people, then you will not achieve positive results. And we face this challenge. We have been investing a lot into these projects, and one colleague is delivering a speech at the parallel session dedicated to some other investment projects. And it is a competitive battle that is happening right now. And our competitors here are not only banks, but Mail.ru, Yandex, and giants, Facebook, Apple, Amazon. They are the major competitors, because the world is a global world now. And we should set interesting tasks. From the very start, we should engage people, we should retain these people so that it is interesting for them to be developing inside the company. And I think that this will be the most important aspects in the nearest future, in 3 to 5 years. Thank you. At our panel, we have the representatives of businesses, of banks, and of those who provide solutions in this sphere. And it is clear that when you come to banks with this new solutions, because Tinkoff Bank is a unique bank because it was digital from the very start of its existence. So when you come to the bank, you have to see the existing landscape, and then you are to add the new solutions. And my question is to Mr. Zolotarev. Can you comment on the problems you are facing when you are trying to integrate the big data tools into the existing landscape? Thank you, Kirill, for the question. Well, you know, when traditional organizations, banks in particular, face this kind of issue, the question is, what can we do with the existing landscape, because a lot has been invested into those systems, they bear fruit, and this is one of the first matters that we are dealing with. And we think that the paradigm has changed in terms of the implementation of IT in corporate sectors and in banks in particular. It was rightly mentioned that 10 years, 20 years ago, ERP was implemented, and the majority of IT systems were built in accordance with the vertical method. We were building a vertical column. On top of that, we had an application that was resolving special functional tasks, middle level, and on the bottom of it, we had the data that provided the necessary information for this application to function properly. And in this paradigm, IT was developing for a very long period of time. And now when we talk about new applications, they were called data-driven applications. So these are applications that are intensively using data and using analytics. And they are built in accordance with another principle. It is not a vertical system, it is a horizontal one. So we have to be ready to work with any type of data, and we have to have a multi-purpose platform that will be dealing with different aspects, the real-time processing, also the download of a large number of files. And the third layer is the layer of applications, because very often we mention that to our clients, and they start understanding it, and they're asking questions. Okay, we will build a system, and it will be used for a number of years, but the question is that it is an analytical system that should be meeting the challenges, and we don't know which challenges we will be facing in our life. So it will have to be multi-purpose, a system that will be able to resolve not only the analytical tasks, but other tasks as well. So the major principle when we are trying to respond to this question is the integration. So we should not be trying to do the following, because in corporate sector with the traditional data storages, people who are working there, they do understand that these traditional data storage providing the reports to the regulators. So the new technologies of big data were trying to build this system around the traditional data storage, because these are the old sources of data. And now we are seeing new platforms that should be standalone, that should be independent platform. And traditional data storage should be serving like one of the elements. And the second aspect, bimodal IT. So you have implemented the system. It happened 10 years ago, and now the system is dying out gradually. So the new tasks should be resolved with the new platforms. And it is a very justified approach. It has been mentioned at this forum many times that the systems of the past were built by people of the old mindset. So the new systems should be built from scratch with the new approaches. So these are the main approaches, bimodal, IT and integration. And in specific case, we resolve which option is to be chosen. I have a question to Denis, Reimer. Besides resolving the integration issues, which are the regulatory institutional problems you are facing, and which kind of success you can achieve there?
This is a great question, because indeed, in our government, in our state, they are talking about the fact that the data about the user's behavior on the internet is something that may be or may not be attributed to the personal data. And we can manage what is available to others outside of your browser. And you know that some websites would collect data about you, and then they would sell it on to somebody else. And if we talk about a data exchange and about our data monetization cloud, we have such participants there as well. All civilized systems, and ours included, allow you to turn yourself off from that system. You can deal with your own privacy issues. You can enter the system and decide, I do not want my private data to be used in order to target advertisements at me. The second question that is asked is the question of ethics. It is something that is broadly discussed nowadays. If you make a personalized offer to someone, how can you make sure that you are not ethically wrong? There's only one solution. I mean, you can recommend something, and if the system believes that if the offer that you're going to be sent is not going to be an ethical choice, it's going to be given to you in a list of others. So these are the main issues that I would like to call out. But if you look at the Western market, this is less present on our market. There are some startups showing up there, startup companies that are showing up there that'll let you to earn money from the data that you are collecting. So you will become the monetizer of your own data. For example, Apple Watch would collect data about your health, and then with the help of this startup, you will be earning money from this startup. They will be paying you money for sharing this data with them. So you can have a role in how much data you can make available. You can also decide whether you want to earn something on that. And it's the question of ethics. And from the government standpoint, from the standpoint of regulation, and I hope there will be no steps taken towards, limiting further what's available on the Internet. We will be talking about segments rather than very pinpointed information. But it's a great question, and we'll just have to observe how things are going to develop further. Thank you. And I would like to move on and go back to our bankers again and ask them a question. Since banks continuously participate in the development of new products, what are the new trends that you see that emerge under the pressure of the digitalization of businesses? What is the current outcome? And my first question goes to Alexander Yemishev. Trends. Pressure. Well, everything is very straightforward and simple. The number of gadgets is growing, and that impacts how we think about particular products. And whenever we think about products within our bank or any other financial organization, when we create a product, we think, well, great, we have this data. It's interesting. It's cool. I will look at how to analyze the behavior of our users. And the main trend is that people are trying to avoid being the targets of various queries and polls. And instead, people are just analyzing the real data. And before you launch your product, you can more or less prove or disprove a hypothesis you'll begin with. And then you have a second cycle. And your cycle can be accelerated. This allows you to launch your projects easier because you can have a proof of concept much easier. And take the example of what has been happening in the past years. I mean, there was a fairly slow process. And in that case, I wouldn't say it was just the sellers of the spades that earned money. Those that were doing the digging, they also earned some money. And when we talk about CRM and when you integrated them with various channels, that allowed you to verify your hypothesis, whether something needed to be changed or not. And I think it's to everyone's benefit. A, we have less, how should I put it, less of unneeded products. And B, from the standpoint of a financial organization, you will spend less money that you pump into creating a product instead of X months, 6 or 9 months that a traditional bank would spend. Now you can do this in a matter of several days. You verify something within a matter of days. You see that it doesn't work, then you make adjustments, and then you move forward. These are the key trends that I would like to identify. And they have to do with the fact that you already have the data available. You can use them to check things, and then you have tools to test yourself. That's my answer to your question. Thank you very much. Thinking about the subject of big data, I have to touch upon the issue of data security. The requirements for information security, they of course affect the productivity and functionality of the products we build, like open source tools here in Russia. But I'd like to ask Ron a question. Can you comment on the subject of data security, please?
So I think that security is actually very multifaceted. And so one of the advantages big data, of robots, as some of the panelists have talked about, is that you actually increase security because you don't have so many people that have access to sensitive information that might decide it could be a good source of other income for themselves. That the downside, however, is that once you have all of this information that's in your big data lake or whatever you decide to develop, that if people can broadly access that, then you create new sources of security problems. And so one of the things that we have built into our solution, our platform, is the ability to define roles for people, and they just simply can't access information that is not part of their role. And so I think you must carefully think about, for each of the kinds of information you have, who should be able to access it, and then try to see, are there ways that you can anonymize the information to make it available to others that don't have the need to know the specifics, but have a need to see the results. So I think security takes an entirely different turn once you're starting to use some of these big data analytical capabilities.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to hear what the banks think about this. The question again to Alexander Yemyshev. An important aspect of information security is the ability to process personal data. Are there any requirements for the analytical tools and the infrastructure that you need to have, something that you use in your real practice in your bank? What would you say to this? I cannot say that we set a special set of requirements that would be different from anybody else. Yes, indeed, we have a lot of people that deal with issues of security, security of data, and this is a well-built and established process. Usually, this is not something that we talk a lot about. Why would we give anyone an opportunity, anyone from the outside, to have an opportunity to gain access to the data about our security procedures? Of course, nobody would reveal their scoring approaches because you do not want, con men to get access to your scoring system and then gain access to your loans. All of these methods have been established, and if you want to work with data, then there are lots of methods and tools you could use. You can hash your data if you work with a partner, or you could build models, you could use scores. There is nothing new that I can say about this because everyone who works with the data, they know all of these things and everything is fairly straightforward. Speaking about this from the regulatory point of view, Denis has already mentioned this. Now there is a trend towards streamlining this whole thing. Maybe introducing a bill that would, organize all of these things properly. I do not believe that this is indeed what is relevant right now. And here is why. There is a law on personal data. It defines clearly what personal data is. And the personal data is something that can clearly identify, unequivocally identify who the individual is. And from that standpoint, the information, the data that is called big data, and we're talking about data about the users of the internet and users of a particular network. This data is not something that allows you to unequivocally identify a particular individual. And if it does, it cannot be used because it's not transmitted to anyone else. So I think this whole talk about the issue of privacy, this is a little bit far-fetched and maybe irrelevant because those who discuss this are not really immersed in this process that we are immersed in. Thank you very much. Your opinion is clearly understood. I would like to ask a question of Sergey Zolotarev. Do you see any correlation between the demand from the customers for analytical solutions and the degree of computer security requirements that they pose? Well, I cannot give you a straightforward answer to your question, what the ratio or the correlation is. I mean, but you have to look at this historically, from the historical standpoint. Many solutions for big data problems were open source solutions. And initially, the customers would be the ones that would represent business departments, marketing departments, sales departments, who would be very curious about what the data could provide them with as tools to, profile their clients and come up with new offers. They were looking at the functionality of what the data had to offer. So initially, the demand was coming from the business community, and then later on, as the solutions matured, and then based on those, serious platforms were being erected, then those platforms were being introduced and integrated into the systems of big banks, then the segregation of access was something that became very relevant. And now what we see in the example of the Russian market is that on this balance, this is equally treated. It's considered to be equally important. And let me just say that all of the engines for the big data require very straightforward architecture from the hardware standpoint, but the question of functionality and security are, again, way the same on the balance, because the information systems cannot be built without paying due attention to security and segregation of data. And this would not be possible in this day and time. Thank you very much. The issue of data security, it's inexhaustible, and if we dive into this body of water, we will not be able to come to the surface. So let us focus on the subject of big data. Whenever we implement something that deals with digitization or digitalization of a bank or an organization, we always talk about new paradigms, new approaches to building new systems. And we know that cloud architectures and scale-out architectures are dominating this. And I would like to ask Ron to comment on the key factors of success when you move towards cloud technologies if you represent a financial institution. Thank you, Ron.
Sorry about that. So it's actually interesting because the term cloud has kind of changed over time. So that a few years ago when I would talk to CIOs and I would try to talk about cloud and they'd say, oh, we already did that. When what they actually meant is they had done some virtualization. And now, when I talk to CIOs, particularly in finance, and I say cloud, and they're like, "Oh, our regulator won't allow us to use cloud." So, but the concept of what is cloud and how it is utilized is really more about the concepts than it is a concrete thing, right? Well, clouds shouldn't be concrete anyway, but there are uses within your organization for the technologies and the techniques of cloud computing, and there are uses within your organization for utilizing those capabilities outside. So from a public cloud, from a Yandex, from a Google or an Amazon Web Services. I think the key is to be able to have full control over which things you put where, and be able to manage all of that in the most efficient fashion. So we have one of the use cases for big data on a public cloud is to validate algorithms. So in the case of one of our largest banks in China, they wanted to do real-time fraud detection, and to be able to build those algorithms, they needed to run lots of cases, lots of simulation, and they didn't want to build the internal infrastructure to be able to do that. So what we did was help them to anonymize the data in a way that they could then utilize a public cloud to be able to do the analysis, come up with the algorithms, and then they run all of that within their private environment so that they don't have any of the security problems. So the concept of cloud is about really hybrid cloud, right? When should I use and when can I use parts of public cloud? When should I use those techniques within my own internal IT infrastructure? And then how do I make all of that most efficient and make the regulators happy?
Спасибо большое. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now would like to move on to another subject and talk about innovation. And if we talk about innovation in this new area of big data, I would like to say, first and foremost, that I'm appealing to the big business representatives, because no one other than them can identify the prospects of digital economy as far as they apply to the financial sector. And so my question is going to be directed at Ralf. Despite the fact that we still use a lot of cash, and the cash will continue to be one of the traditional approaches to trade, where do you think innovation will be played a role here as far as the big data is concerned for monetary transactions?
Cash. Thank you very much for this question. Afraid as well. We all have heard yesterday and today this cashless payment. We remember this presentation of this American man from America. Yesterday this was the first presentation. And if I understood him right, he gave some information about China. China today, they have cashless payment about 90%. I'm not sure if I understood this right, but let's take this message. 90% cashless payment by cards, by a smartphone or by a smartwatch, or I don't know what else they develop. In India, I know very well that they have now a vision for cashless India. I have no idea how they will do this, because I was working in there for a couple of years, and a couple of million Indians are living on the countryside. They do not have no knowledge about reading, no knowledge about counting. They have not a smartphone. They cannot even use a smartphone. I do not know. I do not know how it should be. On the other hand, we know that in Sweden, for example, there are cities you cannot buy cash today. You only can pay by these cashless ideas. And there are some other trends like this as well. In Russia, even in Russia, I noticed when I buy a coffee or a tea, let's say for 90 ruble, even this, the people pay today with a smartwatch or with a telephone. I pay with the cash. And I have a reason for this, because I love cash. And Vladimir smiles. It is, for me, and for others as well, cash is more secure from my point of view than these cashless payments. We do not realize this today, but I'm sure something, or not I'm sure, but something can happen, and so on. People remind us. But what we have today, the cash cycle, of course, can and must be improved. And here we use the big data. And the big data that I've shown before in my presentation. A banknote gives us a lot of big data. The only thing what we need to do now is to analyze this, to use this, to take measures, and to implement. And this will be the next steps here in Russia, and I think all over the world as well. And then is cash, or let's say a cash cycle, competitive to this cashless payment. We never should be without money. I do not want that my telephone tells me, oh, tonight you cannot go for a dinner, or you cannot buy this food. This will never work with me. And I hope you think like this тоже. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But if we take the medium-term prospect, and if we have a look at the epoch in 5 to 10 years, we will not be thinking about the writers of science fiction, but if we take the banking segment, which business initiatives could become relevant in the foreseeable future when we have already the artificial intelligence and other computing approaches, other innovative changes? And I would like to direct my question to Algidras, please. I'd like to react to the previous questions. I can recall that when we were implementing this initiative with big data and machine learning for our information security, it was like an explosion in our brain. And at a certain stage, we thought that once in a week you go through the polygraph inspection, and then you will concentrate your attention only on the small part, but you have to see big data as a whole, and if you need extra data, you should be adopting a new approach, and a polygraph can be used for some purposes. And of course, we have come to an agreement, and now we are moving towards some hybrid approach, because without hybrid, you cannot survive in today's world and in the future. What are the expectations for the future? I'm quite confident that next year, as for private individuals, 50% of all the sales will be related to machine learning, half of the new business that we are bringing in. As for legal entities, I think in mass segment a little bit less, but it is a fast-growing sector. And this is a very active business line because they use data for decision-making. There is a higher level of segment, but it is a very comprehensive task to streamline data, and we have to wait a little bit. But there are new initiatives and interesting initiatives that enable you to get the profiles of legal entities on some markets. It is already done, and we can forecast some prices, which tenders will be won, what will be the amount of procurement they will be requesting, and in 2 to 3 years, we think that we can expect some breakthroughs in legal entities segment. But as I have mentioned in my speech, I think that today we are focusing on tactics, on the strategy, but it is a flexible thing because every year it is changing, and we are thinking about strategic prospects for 3 years approximately. And as for these 3 years or 5 years, I hope that new sales for private individuals, 80% of these sales will be implemented, maybe even up to 90% will be implemented with the use of big data technology and also machine learning principles. Because even if some trends are inert and some people will still go to the offices, the salesman and the specialist at the bank, they will be like a combination of a robot and a person. And when a person comes into the office, we recognize that this is a person, and the specialist sees not only his surname, his patronymic, but also the full profile, what he's inclined to buy, his psychotype. And it is not only about thinking about this information, but all the groundwork has been done, and the model has been developed, the profile that gives you all the necessary data. And that will be a combination in the specialist, the combination of a personal factor, human factor, and the robot factor, and the work of a system. So I'm quite optimistic about it. And as I have mentioned, the automation of sales will be based on this big data, because I'd like to reiterate that it is not possible to render services to millions of clients so efficiently. Only when using big data it can be achieved. Yes, it's clear that digital bank cannot have successful results without business intelligence, without business analytics. So the processes are changing, the roles inside organizations and the roles between different organizations. And now I would like to direct my question to Alexander. What do you think about the distribution of functions between stock exchanges of data, the brokers, and other stakeholders because of the trends that we see? And business intelligence, where will that be focused? Where is it now? Well, it's a complicated question. If you don't know where it is now, then I cannot respond to your question. Well, look. Let's formulate it in this way. So if we take today, my viewpoint is that we do not have the industry related to the well-organized data because we are only at the beginning of the way if we compare ourselves to other markets. And of course, you will throw stones at me. We do not have the organized, the well-established data, stock exchanges, and now the platforms are only emerging. And the market will be developing, and more or less it will be a sustainable market. The players will have the data. Maybe it will happen in 5 years when it will become well-established market. And business intelligence is being formed and is concentrated in the place where the data exists. And we can have two players as of today. Some insurance company, financial institution, or some kind of bureau, classic type, bureau of credit history, or other types of organizations. And the expertise is being concentrated there. And the data can be found there, the data about the customer, and they do understand their products, they do understand where the data comes from and what they mean. Or the second place is the bank, where the data will be used. So in the next 3 to 5 years, these will be the main players of the market that will define the processes. Why is it like this? Well, we can take an example. Machine learning is on the lips of everyone. Colleague has told you about the profiling on mobiles, and we have conducted some tests for such kind of profiling, and we do understand that it will not help in some aspects. It will not help us, because we are doing a lot of work that is related to mobiles, and this kind of profiling does not render us any help, any support, because the personal manager has a great impact on the overall process. Those who are sitting in the call center, it is a human factor. Somebody does that well, somebody does that badly, and to some as for some clients, he will seem like a very beautiful, a very intelligent and smart one, and he will process this information, but it will not have any impact on the efficiency of the model. Because that depends on the way specialist works. So he can drink coffee in the morning and then he works better, but it's a human factor. So why am I saying that business intelligence is used, is being analyzed where the data exists? And we, for example, are transforming the voice into the text, and we found some words, some expressions that help the operator to say it better. Something. For example, you have not drunk coffee in the morning, but then if you are guided by those things that you have to say these words and these expressions to a person, and then it will not depend on the gender of the operator or whether he has drunk coffee or not. He will have something that will help them to make a decision. It is a quality of communication, yes, of course. So it is a simple example of the application, and you can understand it only after after you conduct certain amount of tax. So I do not believe that brokers and data stock exchanges in the next 3 to 5 years could accumulate this type of expertise. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we tried to touch upon the topic that is a very multifaceted one. And of course, we studied some fragments, some aspects of it, because if we speak about the big data in general, we can be talking about the collection, the management, and the usage of big data. And every area deserves a detailed discussion. And in order to implement all of that, we need innovative approaches, algorithms, and new platforms. And when we talk about implementing that in the credit organization that is related to loans and introducing that into the existing landscape, it is all about changing the culture and changing business processes, changing the mindset of people who are working in banks, and we should understand what we are giving in the form of data. So a lot of topics are there, and I'm quite confident that on the margins of FINOPOLIS forums, so the discussions will continue, and our breakout session is the continuation of the discussions that we have had about AI, digitalization, these discussions that we have had today. So that is the main topic of FINOPOLIS, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, our speakers and the participants and the guests. Thank you very much for spending time to come here after lunch. Thank you.